how to make yourself stand out in this environment?
Like I said, I generally have interest in interviews throughout my career. It's just something I enjoy, right? And the second thing is also that when I spoke to people, I try to also understand what they do that make them successful, right, in their application. I think there's two parts to this, right? This question is quite broad. One is getting the interview. The second one is actually interviewing, right? So I think that getting the interview, I already kind of spoke about what you need to do, but I did notice some interesting things that people have done, right? And this one, again, like I mentioned before, this is just collective wisdom from myself and Chris observing the community. Like, you need to pick and see what makes sense, right? I have seen people actually craft proposals, projects, even code, right, for stuff related to the company unrequested. I've seen that happen, right? So that's really going the extra mile, or they've done it even when the interview process has started unrequested, right? And so this usually depends on, I guess some role or seniority, but I've seen people craft go-to-market plans when they knew they were going to speak to the hiring manager already, right? That's the thing. The other one is you need to prep a lot, right, for interviews. I know everyone here is an expert, but just to cover it, right, you need your typical technical prep, right, your behavioral prep. The behavioral, a lot of people underestimate, especially if you haven't interviewed in a long time, because you have a lot of experiences, but maybe you need to spend time bucketing them, right? But the third one I think is always interesting. This one is something that I felt was like, for me personally, I felt like it has helped me a lot over the years, right? It's really having a very strong story. And I think it applies a lot in general interviews, but even more so now, right? To a lot of employers, when people from the FANG apply or that, I think compared to previous, it looks like a blanket, right? Like, oh, all these tech people are applying. So the question is how to stand out, right? And I think this is the tough one, because even when the layoffs were happening in 2023, I spoke to a lot of people and I say, hey, you need to really have a good story, right? And naturally the reaction was like, oh, I have this story on it. I said, no, you really need to take time to think about it, because the story is not that simple, right? It needs to be genuine. It ideally needs to be personal, right? And it needs to be relevant for the company. Why is this relevant for the company, right? For example, right? So a good way to determine if, say an example, I won't say good way, like one of the examples to determine if you have a good story, I would think, is put yourself in this situation, assuming you are seeing the hiring manager, and they won't say this right naturally, but assume it's this. They say that, we have someone who on paper is more qualified and experienced than you for the role. Why should we still hire you over this person? Right? If you feel that you can answer this question in a very strong manner with a very strong story, I think it really helps to stand out, right? And also it helps with your applications in general. Think about it, right? When someone tells the hiring manager, hey, I have this great person, they come from this company, like that's common, right? But what is the interesting story that they can tell, right?